Hello everyone, it's Natasha from Treasure Books. In this video, we are using tree branches or twigs to bind our journals. This is a whole lot of fun and it's actually really quick too. So I have written step-by-step notes over here so that you can have a visual demonstration as well as the notes to refer back to. I particularly love this project because using tree branches to bind journals gives that final project a specific kind of look that I'm totally in love with, and I hope you are too. Alright, let's get started with the tutorial. Okay, so the first step is to collect different looking branches, the straighter the better. So by different looking, I mean you want different colors, different textures, as they all produce different looking results, and it's just nice having that variety. And also, as I said, the straighter the better. It's much easier to bind a journal with a straight twig like this, or somewhat straight like this, rather than bendy and curvy ones, because when you have a curvy stick like this, you're actually losing that much space. It's as if you have a really thick stick. So it will make sense when I show you the binding. So the next thing you want to do is snap them, because you might be finding longer branches. So you just snap them to the size you want, and it all depends on how large you want your journal to be. I collected all of these sticks in my backyard, so I collected them off the floor, so they were pretty much already dry and very easy to snap. In terms of the size, there's no rules. You can have your sticks the exact same height as your pages. You can have the sticks longer than your pages. You can have something like this, and that looks quite nice as well. Or you can have something like this, where they're shorter than your pages. They all look really nice. It just gives you a different effect. And it's also a good idea to give them a little bit of a clean. So I really just quickly gave these ones a bit of a clean, to get rid of any of the extra, bits and dirt and stuff like that. You might want to use some type of a brush, or you might even want to seal. I didn't actually seal the wood. I didn't use anything on the stick. I just used it as it is, but I give them a little bit of a clean. Step number 3 is to prepare your pages. I have some pages ready to go here. You can have single pages like this, or you can have folded pages like this. So you can make a traditional signature where you put folded pages inside each other like this. You can have single pages only like this and bind them, or you can have a combination of both, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to assemble my pages the way I want them. I'm actually even using some type of a fabric material. I haven't used this in any of the other journals I made, but I'm going to use it on this one. So here we go. This is how I want my journal to look. I took a little bit of time assembling these because I wanted bits and pieces peeking out and stuff, and I just wanted it to look good. So as you can see, I have the folded pages, I have some single pages. Here's a single page, and I just kind of assembled it all together and make sure that they're all kind of sitting flush against that spine, if that makes sense. I can have this one in there somewhere as well, but I'm thinking I want to keep this for to embellish the front somehow. In terms of the number of pages, you can really go ahead and put as many pages as you like in there. Nothing is stopping you from having a really thick journal with this type of binding. Or you can just have one little piece of artwork. So there's no rules here. You choose what you want. I made all of mine kind of on the thinner side, just because that's sort of how it spoke to me, and I just wanted them like little thin journals. But you can most definitely have a whole lot more pages in there. You just have to make sure that the string that you use for binding and the way that you bind your book is really strong and sturdy and tight. So speaking of binding, we're moving on to that next. We are getting there. So the next step is to assemble and place your pages the way that you want, which is what we've already done. Now choose the branch that you want to use on the journal, and you place your branch. You can't really see this branch because it's quite dark, but you place it kind of where you want it to sit when you bind your journal. So I like to have a little bit of space here from the edge. If you can see in all of the ones that I've made previously, there's a little bit of space there. There is an option of binding the branch here on the edge as well, but I'm not going to do that today. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just thinking if I want to use a different branch. All right, I'm gonna go with this branch here. So you place your branch exactly where you want it to sit when the journal is bound. And then you mark 3 holes. You can see here, you mark 3 holes underneath the branch. So I'm gonna start with the middle, and you can see what I mean by when the branch is curved, it takes up a whole lot more space on that spine or on that edge. Whereas something like this, when it's completely straight, it takes up less space. And then something like this would take up all of this space, which basically means when your journal is bound, you're losing this whole section, because when you're opening your pages, it can only open to where the branch is. So you're losing a whole lot of space with a curved branch. So this is where I want my branch to sit. I'm gonna mark the first hole, the middle hole. So I'm just eyeballing it here. I'm moving my branch a little bit so I can mark here. And then I'm gonna do my top hole up here and the bottom hole somewhere here. I'm gonna pierce a hole here, here, and then up here. So you can see there's a little bit of curvature there, just like there's curvature in the branch that I'm using. So now before I pierce the holes, I wanna make sure all the papers are sitting in there where I want them, and they're all kind of flush against the spine. And now if you want, you can hold it in place with a large paper clip or something like that. Not necessary, but it might help you. And now I'm just piercing those holes, and there we go. I have my 3 holes in here. You can have 2 holes, you can have 5 holes. So we're just doing a 3-hole binding, but you would follow the exact same steps for 5 holes or for 2 holes. All right, next thing I need to do is get my needle and thread ready. I am using just embroidery floss. If I had a lot more pages in here, if I was going for a thick journal, I would definitely use something stronger. Perhaps something like this binding thread that I've got, waxed binding thread. And I got this on eBay. And here we go. So for the binding, you need approximately 3 times the height of journal with your thread. I mean, so we've got 1, 2, 3. So that's approximate 3 times the height, and that's probably a little bit too much, but it's better to have more than not to have enough. And here we go, my needle and thread ready. And these are the notes here, and this is our binding. So these are the 3 holes. And now I'm gonna grab my stick. So try and remember the way that you had it when you placed it here. So if I do this now, the holes are not gonna be where they should be, because the holes should be really directly underneath the stick. And for the first hole, we're going to go into the first hole from the back. So we're starting at the back, coming through all the way to the front. And I'm gonna go right sort of to the end of that thread, because I'm gonna keep working with this thread here, and I'm not going to need this back one anymore. So I'm just leaving a little tail at the back. Now we're wrapping around and going back into the same hole. How simple is this? Doesn't get much easier than that. Here we go. So we're wrapping around the branch and back out through the same hole, just like that. And now what I like to do, you can tie a knot here, but I like to wrap twice. So I'm going to repeat this same step. I'm going to go back in, around the branch, and back out to the back. As I'm doing this, I am keeping everything really, really tight as possible. And now here at the back, I'm going to tie a double knot, maybe even a triple knot, can't hurt. Okay, so that's the first one done. Now for the second hole, we're pretty much repeating the exact same thing. So we're going to go into the second hole from the back, all the way through to the front. That's what you have at the back now. We're wrapping again around the branch and back out through the same hole. I'm keeping everything really, really tight, like I'm really pulling on it here. And now I'm going to repeat the same thing, so because I want to wrap around twice. So you want to make sure the first time you wrap, you come in from here, you wrap, you go out there, and then the second time you wrap, you want to come back on this side again. You don't want to put your needle on this side. If it's confusing now, it will make sense when you're actually doing it. And here we go. So that's the second hole done. We're here at the back. So if you want, you can maybe tie a knot here when everything is nice and tight. It's not really, I didn't write it in the steps. It's not 100% necessary, but it doesn't hurt. So here we go. And now we're going into the third hole. So we're pretty much repeating the exact same thing. We're going into the third hole from the back to the front. There we go, wrapping around the branch and back out the same hole, back in and out. So I've wrapped twice. I just like the look of having thicker, you know, thread here and the security of wrapping twice. This is what the back looks like. You can see it's a little bit curved, just like the stick that I used. And now we're tying a knot here at the back. Keep everything as tight as you possibly can. I'm gonna do a triple knot just to be sure. The last step here is cutting the string. So you can go ahead and hide this if you want with some washi tape or masking tape or whatever, but I really like this look. I think it goes with the overall look and feel of the project. But what I do want to do, and I do that usually as a very, very last step, when everything else has been finished, I go ahead and I dab a little bit of glue onto those knots. Because you're opening and closing the book constantly and using it, and things might get loose. So you don't want, especially if you're using just embroidery floss, but even waxed thread can be slippery and knots can get undone. So I just like to use a little bit of glue on there to make sure that everything stays in place. And here is the little book. I love the freedom that comes with this, using the branches. It gives it somewhat of a raw kind of grungy type of, maybe not grungy, but what I'm trying to say, anything goes. You can have ripped edges, you can have all different types of things going on. You are not striving for perfection. In fact, the more kind of grungy it looks, the better. So now I'm just going to decide, I wanted to keep this. I'm going to decide how I'm going to embellish this journal. So I usually like to layer a few bits and pieces. I'll show you these ones in more detail. So here I've just used some buttons. This is a handmade button and a little bit of that trim underneath. And here I just sewn on this. This was actually from a tablecloth that I cut up and layered a few bits and pieces on there. Here the same thing. So I've got, you know, 3 pieces layered and a butterfly button sewn on. And same here, just added a little bit of hand stitching to make that to go with the kind of overall look. You can see here handmade paper, ripped edges, and it just looks great in my opinion. Like, I love that look of ripped paper. This one as well, same thing, just layering, and that's what I'm going to do on this one today. You can see here I used a metal piece and sewn that on, just stitched it onto that piece of fabric and layering. Same here. I don't know what this is from, but I think it looks pretty good on this journal. And this one here has 5 holes. So if you were to do 5 holes, you do exactly the same thing that we've done here. You just keep going and you tie your knot at the end. To be honest with you, I feel like anything that I put on here, it looks good. What about something like this? I love the look of those buttons. It goes really well with all that textured paper. I don't know, I like to keep things simple. So I mean, we could keep going with this embellishing process for ever and ever. There's always one other little thing that we can add to make it more special, and I'm just adding a tea bag there just to check and see how I feel about it. I have a whole box of these tea bags that are ready to go, and I feel like a really grungy one, maybe something like this, would look even better. So I just want ripped edges, and I'm removing this. Oh, I ripped it too much. Oh well. I don't often make grungy books like this, but for this project I think it's the way to go, because with the tree branches and I don't know, it just looks like it really goes well together. I want to make the edges of this look rough, and I have this little tool and I have no idea, there's nothing on it. I have no idea where I got it from, but it makes the edges look quite rough, I guess. I thought it would do more of a ripped look, but I mean, you could really just do it with using scissors as well, so you don't need to get the tool, but it exists. If only I knew what it's called. Maybe paper edge roughener. Probably not. I don't think that's what it's called, but I dropped a button and then I saw this on the floor and I thought even adding a little bit of twine just randomly like that would look nice. Let's see. I'm happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these buttons on directly through. I'll just hold one in place. I'm going to sew it directly through the 3 pieces or however many pieces I have, and then I'm going to glue the final piece onto my journal. So I just make it simple for myself by piercing the holes first, and then I don't have to guess where the needle has to go. Alright, there's the first button. It seems to me like there's a lot more freedom in this project, and I don't know if it's simply because of the nature of the tree branch that we're using, which is imperfect and irregular and grungy looking, and I'm not sure, but with this project I don't feel like things need to be done perfectly or glued down perfectly. And as an example, usually when I'm gluing things down on my covers, I'm very particular about getting all the way to the end with the glue so that there's no lifting. Whereas in this project, I felt like it's okay to just leave things not perfectly glued down or not perfectly straight, or like here, this part is not glued down at all, and this isn't, I'm not going to glue this down, I'm going to leave that. I don't know if that's making any sense, but I feel like it's easy because we're not striving, not that I'm ever really striving for perfection, but I feel like I have a little bit more freedom in this project than usually, you know, when I'm making journals. So I could go ahead and maybe add some stitching, maybe just a couple of stitches here. This is what I mean, we can just keep on going forever, but I think I'm just going to glue this down right on top here. And here we go. I think this one's done. It looks beautiful and it goes really well with the collection that I have. And in fact, it might even be my favorite one. And I find that each one that I make becomes my favorite one. The latest one is always my favorite one. I don't know why that works that way, but I think this is my favorite one. And I think having this little piece of string here just added all that much. I think it's like the perfect finish. And you know, it doesn't even have to be just tree branches. I used a pencil here on my prototype when I was trying to work out how to do it. And these are my very simple notes here, going into the first hole, around the branch, tie knot at back, move to the middle hole, around branch, then bottom hole, and tie knot at back. So really very simple. And if it's not tight, this is what happens. So that's why it's important to make sure everything is held really tightly as you're binding. Let me know what you think. Next, I'm going to pop this up on screen so you can take a screenshot. And here we go. So you can take a screenshot of these notes or copy them down. I hope it's helpful. I think I covered everything. One of my subscribers mentioned that they miss my notes in the videos. So I thought I'm going to go back to doing that where it applies, I guess. I hope you feel inspired. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!